Greetings and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. In this video, we'll be taking a first look at the game Battles in the East, Volume 3. This is from Decision Games. It is designed by Antony Birkett. And as you can see, Volume 3 indicates there are two previous volumes, and I have both of those as well. This one was just released. I just received it recently, and I'm doing it first, actually, only because this covers the year 1945 with two games here, Drive to the Sea, West Prussia, January 45, and Battle for Pomerania, February 45. Volumes 1 and 2 cover different years in the war, and I will get to those later, but for now we're going to take a look at this one and concentrate on this guy first. So here you see the back of the box, age 14 and up, two-player game, playing time 2 to 4 hours, map scale 3 to 5 miles per hex, or 5 to 8 kilometers, counter scale, regiments and divisions, or regiment 2 division perhaps. Complexity is medium, solitaire value is high. That's always key for me. Now, Battles in the East is a series simulating World War II Eastern Front battles. The system rules are an evolution of the SPI Classics Panzer Group Guderian. Army Group South and Cobra unit integrity bonuses include Soviet Corps and vary to show the increasing Soviet cohesion and decreasing German cohesion as the war progresses. HQ units provide higher level combat support and supply advantages to the corresponding units in range. BITE also incorporates standard scales, unit size, distance, time for easy comparisons. While the series rules allow players to play many games with the same core rules, the scenario rules add unique situational elements of each battle. Each volume includes 2 battles from 1 year, with 2 copies of the charts and tables, as well as scenario rules and setup cards for easy reference. Okay, so you got descriptions of both Drive to the Sea and Battle for Pomerania. We'll get into that a little later, probably when I do my playthrough. I'm not sure which one I'll do. Here, January, we're doing a look at 1945 because of it being the 80th anniversary of that year. I have removed the shrink wrap so we can take a look at what's inside the box. We have some baggies. We have a single 6-sided die. We have the system rules for Battles in the East. And we'll take a look at that first. All right. So, as I mentioned, game design is by Antony Birkett. He also does some OCS stuff for MMP. So he's kind of an expert on Eastern Front battles. And he's been the designer for the first 2 volumes, as well as this new 3rd volume in the series. And as we mentioned before, it's an evolution of SPI Games Army Group South and Panzer Group Guderian, and also incorporates some mechanics and such from later games such as Cobra. So we did scales, definitions, rounding, rules, control, game equipment, the maps, of course, your counters. And then you have examples of said counters here. So we'll take a closer look at this. And you can see you've got on the unit front, you've got the unit type symbol, infantry. The unit ID is here. The formation ID is here. Unit size, attack strength, defense strength, movement allowance. Pretty standard. Reverse, you've got last step indicator, the optional indicator right here, etc. Now, the O in the upper right corner indicates it is optional. Optional units are covered in scenario rules. All right, then you've got your unit types here, in case you're not familiar with the various NATO symbology. Markers, of course. Soviet infantry units are primarily divisions. German infantry units are primarily regiments. German armor and mechanized units are primarily regiments as well. Soviet armor, mechanized, and Cav mech units are generally brigades. Early war types may be divisions. In this particular game, of course, we're going to be late war. So I would expect that they will probably be brigades. Headquarters are represented at the Army level for both sides, as well as German Corps headquarters. And then we've got how to win, how to set up, and of course, our sequence of play. So game turns, each turn is composed of 2 player turns. The player whose player turn is in progress is called the phasing player. And then the turn proceeds in the following sequence. Each phase must be carried out in the order given. The scenario rules for each battle will state the player who plays first each turn. We have a weather determination phase, an air support phase, and then the first player will then complete phases C through H. C is reinforcement. D is the supply phase, right here. E, the initial movement phase. F, the combat phase. G, the mechanized movement phase. H, the air phase. After both players have completed their player turn C to H, we have I, which is game turn indication, where you'll check for victory points and remove or remove any attack supply marker on the just completed turn. The players advance the game turn marker one box on the turn record track to indicate the end of one game turn and the beginning of the next turn. Once the last game turn of the scenario has been completed, the game's over and the players determine who has won. Reinforcement rules, railroad entry. Overstacking. Reinforcements may overstack in an on-map entry hex, but must meet stacking limits by the end of the initial movement phase. So basically, you can stack them up, but then you have to split them up so that they're not in violation of stacking rules. A couple of examples here. And we've got supply rules. So you do have a line of supply explanation, hex by hex trace from a specific combat unit or HQ to a supply source. Supply sources may be designated map edges, cities, or other locations specified in the scenario rules. And then you have different statuses, basically, for supply level. You have general supply, attack supply, and other. Otherwise, you are out of supply. And we have a description of out of supply, what general supply and attack supply mean, zones of control, and then movement, and then some subsections here, movement restrictions, and then mechanized units for the differences with what they can do. Overrun rules, disengagement rules, units with no movement allowance, stacking and division / core integrity. You've got the stacking rules here. So you have unit axis division, regimental equivalent. So both sides are limited to 4.5 regimental / brigade equivalent RE per hex. So for the Axis, that's 3 REs. For Soviet Infantry Division 2, Soviet Militia or Mountain Division 1.5. Soviet Armor Mech or Cavalry 1, Brigade or Regiment 1, German Kampfgruppe 1, etc., etc. Leaders do not count towards the stacking limits. Then you've got some examples. Then you've got DCI, Division Core Integrity, and how that's affected for in combat or overrun, defense, etc. And I'm not going too in-depth here because we'll get into this when we do the playthrough. Here we have our combat rules. There's a lot of examples, as you can see. Combat overview, multiple unit and multi-hex combat, combat support shifts, rather, for the combat results table, the CRT. So it's a series of ratio columns, the CRT, with results generally improving for the attacker as one moves to the right and improving for the defender as one moves to the left. And you got terrain, HQs, leaders, and column support shifts, air and naval, armor, anti-tank, and specialists, assault and combat engineer units, artillery and rocket units, combat resolution, combat results, retreats, advance after combat, air support, headquarters, leaders. And then you've got untried units, weather, fortifications, naval rules, bridging units, and the back page, the sequence of play summary. This is always handy to have, so you can see how you go through the entire turn. That is the rule book. As I said, we will get into the specifics once we start playing. Let's take a look at what else we've got in the box. Here we have some charts on our player aid. We have our turn record track. And then some notes here for the battle for Pomerania. You withdraw all 47th Army units on turn 3. Drive to the sea. You will remove all 70th Army units on turn 8. Got tables for air support for the 2 games. Division core integrity chart for both games in one table. Then weather tables for both. Single-sided. Now here we have some scenario rules. And there are 2 copies of each. So these would be the 2 copies for the Battle for Pomerania, rather. with specifics for them, two-sided. Setup information on the back here. So then we have 2 copies of that. And then we also have 2 copies of the Drive to the Sea rules. This is West Prussia, January 45. This is probably the one I'll play first, but I'm not going to commit to that just yet. Then we have our, of course, scenario-specific rules here. And on the other side, again, the setup. 2 copies of the general player aid card, system PAC. Combat result table, as you can see, goes from low odds to high odds. So obviously high odds favor the attacker, low odds on the left favor the defender. A key for what the results mean, combat shift summary chart on the bottom. On the back, we've got the supply effects chart and the TEC, or terrain effect chart, and what those do for movement costs, defense strength, and supply zone of control. And then, of course, keys and notes down here. All right, we get 2 copies of that as well. Now we'll look at some counters. So here is one counter sheet. And you can see various forces in different color schemes. This kind of reddish, light reddish color is Poland. And we've got Soviets here in brown. We've got some markers here, out of supply, general supply on the back, and some more markers for field fortifications for the Germans. And then a couple more Soviet markers, game turn, snow, victory points, etc. That's a half sheet. Then we have some full sheets here. Here are some Germans. These are Battle for Pomerania. And so you can see some German units here. And on the other side, of course, our Soviets, including some leaders, Zhukov and Bogdanov. And some units. Of course, there is a back. And then we have the markers, or counters rather, for Drive to the Sea. And then, of course, we have our counters for Drive to the Sea, as you can see here. Got some German leaders, von Sauken and Weidling rather, sorry. On this side, the Soviets, Volsky and Rokossovsky. Soviet units, German units. You see some Kampfgruppes there, etc. We've got the Prince Eugen too. Nice. All right. Last but certainly not least is our map. So the game comes with a nice mounted double-sided map. This side is the battles for Pomerania, February 45. This is basically the top 40% or so. And it doesn't lay flat right out of the box, but, you know, I'm not really surprised that happens often with mounted maps, of course, until they kind of learn to lay flat. But you can see the area of this particular battle. We have Stettin up here, and Stargard, and some other areas. So you get the basic idea of where this is. And then let me show you the bottom part. So this is the bottom half of the map. We have our terrain key down here. Right here is the terrain key. Other areas, of course, you've got Neustetten down here, Hammelstein, Ratzeboot, Schneidermühl, etc. And yeah, so that's the first map. Now we're going to flip it over and take a look at the other side. And this is Drive to the Sea, which includes the focal point at the very beginning of the war, Danzig, over here. Right, so this is obviously the Baltic, or the Danziger Bucht, right here. Frische Haff over here. You've got Brownsburg, Mühlhausen, Elbing, Marienburg, etc. So this would be the area for the Drive to the Sea, which is West Prussia, January 1945. And our map graphics were done by Joe Youst. And his maps are always pretty clear and functional. So this is good looking stuff. Very classic look. There's our compass rose at the top. This is a scale of basically looks like 3 miles to an inch. Now we'll take a look at the bottom half. So again, you see the terrain key here. Then we've got, looks like a fortified area here in Milau. And these, of course, have some Polish names because this would be in Poland as well. So there's your look at the map. And that completes our first look at the game Battles in the East Volume 3, Drive to the Sea, and Battle for Pomerania, designed by Antony Birkett and published by Decision Games. And that's going to do it for this one. So please consider liking, sharing, and or subscribing. Please feel free to post comments or questions, and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. But that is it. And we're going to wrap it up here. I'm Joe. This is Hexed Encountered. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.